Welcome to the channel. Today, we're exploring some unbelievable story. Stay tuned and let's dive in. Emily and I first met in a noisy university cafeteria decades ago when I was an eager law student buried in textbooks, and Emily, with her paint-streaked fingers and sparkling smile, quickly attracted everyone around her. She was an art major, a person who exuded creativity and curiosity. Our initial chat was short, initiated by her stealing a sugar packet from my table, but it sowed a seed of curiosity that would grow in the years to come. Our first year together was rough yet exciting. Between managing our schoolwork and exploring our evolving emotions, we often found ourselves slipping away to late-night eateries or secluded areas of campus to chat for hours. Emily's unabashed honesty clashed with my careful inclination, resulting in a balance that shocked and thrilled both of us. During these critical months, I understood Emily was more than simply someone I wanted to date, she was the person I wanted to spend my life with. After university, life took us in various paths. Emily followed her goal of attending an art academy in Barcelona, while I took a difficult post at a famous legal company back home. The distance taxed our dedication, but via lengthy letters and rare visits, we were able to keep our love alive. During a particularly memorable trip to Barcelona, as we wandered beneath the city's dazzling lights, I proposed with a little sapphire ring. Her delighted yes remains one of the finest memories of my life. Our wedding was a small but meaningful ceremony conducted in the backyard of Emily's childhood home, surrounded by close friends and family. We agreed to support one another through life's uncertainties. The day was full of laughter, tears, and Emily's trademark flair, as she painted the table centerpieces herself. The evening's highlight was our first dance, which was conducted beneath a canopy of fairy lights with a live string quartet playing quietly in the background. We had several hurdles in the early years of our marriage, ranging from professional difficulties to financial concerns. Despite our problems, we found comfort in one another's steadfast support. Our love became stronger with the arrival of our daughter Sophia, a lively and inquisitive youngster who immediately became the focus of our universe. Balancing motherhood with our objectives was a difficult task, but we accomplished it as a team, depending on mutual love and understanding. Sophia's life became more predictable as she got older. Emily's work started to acquire notice, and I achieved success in my legal profession. We moved into a lovely suburban house with a modest studio where Emily could produce freely. Despite the comfort of regularity, we sometimes ached for the spontaneity that had marked our childhood. As I sat quietly at my desk, my mind roamed over the tapestry of memories that Emily and I had built throughout our 29-year marriage. Among the numerous peaks and troughs of our journey together, one bright memory stood out above the rest: our honeymoon. The vivid recall of that memorable time in Mykonos, the shared experiences, and the strengthened bond, made me grin unintentionally. It was more than just a vacation, it was a monument to the love that would shape the rest of our lives. From the moment we arrived in Mykonos, we felt as if we had entered a timeless paradise. The stresses of everyday life appeared to fade away, leaving behind a tranquility that is almost difficult to describe. I can still imagine us strolling side by side along Kama's powdered beaches, the ocean's soft waves wrapping around our ankles. The air was dense with the pleasant perfume of jasmine, which seemed to reflect the warmth and peacefulness of the islands. Everything seemed like a dream that we didn't want to end. But the genuine charm of that period came not from the breathtaking scenery, but from the memories we shared. We traveled through lush woods, where hidden waterfalls cascaded into dazzling pools, leaving us in awe of nature's splendor. I'll never forget standing by Emily, marveling at the untamed beauty of it all and becoming closer to her with each passing instant. In Mykonos, we stayed in a cliffside villa with magnificent views that appeared to go on forever. Each evening, as the sun slipped below the horizon, painting the sky in blazing tones of orange and pink, we'd hug each other, relishing the peace and love we shared. Our evenings were even more wonderful. Candlelit meals on the seashore became our favorite custom. We dined under the stars on delicious fish and local delicacies, but it was Emily's warm and kind gaze that made those meals memorable. Mykonos was more than simply a destination, it became a living metaphor of our love story, a chapter in our lives that we would cherish forever. Sitting at my work, I couldn't help but think about how profoundly the trip had affected us. It strengthened an already strong bond and instilled a feeling of pleasure and tranquility in our relationship that lasted long after we returned. Decades later, those recollections remained as clear as ever, as did my thankfulness for Emily during those golden days. I was lost in thinking until my secretary entered the room and brought me back to reality. She stopped, her brows raising as she spotted the distant expression on my face and the obvious grin on my lips. "Daniel, you've been in such a great mood lately," she told him. "What is your secret? Did you win the jackpot or something?" Her remarks made me laugh, and I noticed how much lighter I was feeling. "It's Emily," I said, my voice heated. "She has been very considerate and compassionate in the last several weeks. For the first time in years, I feel truly appreciated." I paused, then said, "Honestly, it feels like we're back on our honeymoon. I find myself thinking about her all the time. I even phone her many times a day simply to hear her voice and express how much I adore her." I shook my head and laughed quietly. "I know I sound foolish, like a love-struck child, but I don't mind. I feel alive again, and I don't want it to stop." Emily and I had always had a solid and stable relationship, but after 3.5 decades, the spark was certain to fade. However, something has changed in the last 3 weeks. Emily's fun energy, romantic gestures, and passion had revived our relationship. I didn't question the shift, rather, I welcomed it as an opportunity to reconnect and rediscover what made us fall in love in the first place. That evening, I thought it was time to surprise her with a gift of my own. Leaving work earlier than usual, I swung by the florist to get 2 dozen flowers, then added a heartfelt note, a bottle of her favorite wine, and a box of chocolate-covered cherries to my stash. On top of that, I had secretly booked a 7-day cruise to honor our love, and I couldn't wait to tell her. I came into the home via the garage, excited to see her response. Instead of Emily, I discovered our daughter Sophia seated at the kitchen table. I bent down to kiss her on the forehead and smiled. "Hey, darling, where's your mother?" What I didn't understand was that 3 weeks before, Emily and Sophia had had a chat that put all of these unexpected and amazing events in action. It was a moment that changed everything and revived the magic we believed had faded. "Dad, I really don't know about this," I acknowledged, my voice trembling with uncertainty. "I love your mom so much, and I can't shake the fear that going through with this will hurt her in ways I can't fix." "Dad," Sophia remarked, her voice stern yet calming as she moved forward slightly. "Mom loves you, she will understand. You've told me previously that there are things you've desired but never allowed yourself to have. And let's face it, Dad isn't getting any younger. This is just one occasion. He'd want you to be happy, even if it was a bit unusual." I sighed gently, my palms quivering in my lap. "I can't imagine telling him," I said softly, my voice barely audible. "The notion of staring him in the eyes and confessing that I'm going on a date with another guy is unthinkable. I could never." "Then you don't have to," Sophia remarked, shrugging, her serene tone almost unsettling. "He'll take care of it. At 7, Ethan will be waiting for you at the restaurant. You'll depart by 6, and when Dad returns home, he'll explain everything. You'll get the opportunity to experience something new, something you've been wishing for." I let out a big breath and pushed my fingers to my temples, attempting to center myself. "I do not know, Sophia." "Yes," I said, "I'd go, but now that it's happened, it seems wrong. What if this ruins all I've created with your father? How can I look at him knowing I've walked into something like this?" "Mom," Sophia murmured softly, her voice softening, "you do not have to bear that guilt. Over the next 3 weeks, show Dad how much you care. Remind him that he is everything to you. When I explain, he will see that this is not about replacing him. It's just going outside of your comfort zone and giving yourself a moment of bliss. He will notice how much you still adore him. Believe me, he has always provided for your needs, hasn't he?" I looked at her, conflicted. Her words sounded genuine, yet my heart remained unsteady. I nodded slowly, the tightness in my chest relaxing just a little. "Maybe you're right," I mumbled. "It's just one evening, and I'm not abandoning your father. After 3.5 decades together, one night of anything new should not be so frightening. He'll spend the next 3 weeks making sure he understands how much I adore him, and when I return, he'll remind him that he is my universe." Sophia grinned, her confidence boosting my faltering determination. "Right, Mom. Dad is a fantastic guy. He'll understand, and it'll reinforce what you already have. Now I have to go, James is waiting for me at home. Dinner does not make itself." "Thanks, sweetheart," I said, a faint grin spreading over my face. Oh, and tell James that I said hello. Will you two eventually give me a grandchild? Sophia giggled and grabbed her luggage. Soon, Mom. We've spoken about it, and we want to start trying in a few months. She kissed my cheek and went, leaving the home in complete solitude with the sound of the door clicking shut. I walked inside the art studio Daniel had meticulously made for me years before. The area had been my refuge, but lately it seemed like a cage, creativity suffocated by the weight of my dilemma. Sitting at the easel, I looked at the blank canvas before me, the undisturbed brushes mocking me from the table. For weeks, shame and doubt had stifled whatever spark I may have had. But while I sat there, Sophia's comments started to resonate in my head, chipping away at the wall of skepticism. Almost without thinking, I grabbed a brush. My fingers swept over the canvas in broad, sweeping strokes, allowing colors to pour out into colorful forms. For the first time in what seemed like an eternity, I was producing something new. It felt liberated, like I was doing something just for me. In that calm moment, I murmured to myself, Daniel loves me and always has. He could be unhappy, but I'll show him that this doesn't affect how much he matters to me. That evening, I decided to take it a step further. After a long, soothing shower, I carefully arranged my hair, applied mascara, and put on the baby doll nightgown Daniel had always preferred. A pair of high heels completed the appearance, instilling confidence I hadn't felt in years. When Daniel entered through the door, I greeted him with a warm grin and took him directly to the bedroom, surprising him with a sense of spontaneity we hadn't enjoyed in a long time. Emily, this is the best welcome I've had in years, Daniel said, his smile lighting up the room. Do you mean that? I mocked, unable to conceal my own grin. Absolutely, he responded, bringing me closer. I didn't realize how much I missed this. His remarks removed the last of my uncertainties. That night, we rekindled a bond we had let slip away. Over the following 3 weeks, we were closer than ever, sharing laughter, intimacy, and moments that felt like falling in love all over again. Daniel appeared like a new guy, full of life and enthusiasm, and I felt better than I had in years. I eventually started to doubt the purpose of the date with Ethan. One evening, I confided in Sophia about my uncertainties. I don't think I need to go through with this anymore, I said with regret. Your dad and I have reconnected so beautifully. That's wonderful, Mom, she responded thoughtfully. But don't make your choice just yet. Continue to enjoy your time with Dad, but keep in mind that you may regret passing up the chance. Maybe, I said, considering her comments. Please remind me about Ethan again. I understand he's your friend's father, but tell me more about his tale. Sophia's voice softened. Ethan's wife, Olivia, died after a lengthy fight with a brain tumor. She was his whole universe. After she died, he isolated himself from everyone, including his family and friends. For years, he's been trapped in sorrow. When I recommended he try dating again, he replied he had no idea where to begin. Her eyes lit up as she said, when I mentioned you, something shifted. He grinned for the first time in many years. He stated you looked wonderful and he wanted to meet you. I believe you could really help each other, Mom. Her words echoed in my mind as the day approached, eliciting a mixture of exhilaration and remorse. Texting with Ethan provided an unexpected thrill. It was light-hearted and thrilling, causing a flutter in my chest that I hadn't felt in years. Nonetheless, each evening, I gave myself entirely to Daniel, showering him with tenderness and attention as if attempting to balance the contradictory feelings raging inside me. I couldn't seem to quit smiling recently. Everything seemed lighter, as if a load I hadn't even realized had lifted. Daniel, my 29-year-old spouse, too seemed to have undergone transformation. He moved with a flair I hadn't seen in years, a passion that brought back memories of our early marriage. It seemed as if we were rediscovering one another, seeking a deeper but entirely new relationship. He seemed thrilled, caught up in an experience that well beyond his greatest expectations. I believed I couldn't get any happier until everything unraveled. That evening, I entered the kitchen with 24 flowers, a bottle of wine, and a box of chocolates. To my amazement, Sophia, our only kid, was seated at the table. She glanced up as I walked in, and I felt the same surge of pride I usually had when I saw her. Sophia had developed into a beautiful young woman, strong and compassionate, and I was pleased to call her my daughter. I occasionally regretted not spending more time with her as she grew up. Work had always required so much of me, but I had done all I could to provide for her and Daniel, to give them a wonderful life, and I believed I had been there when it counted the most. "Sophia, what a nice surprise," I remarked, placing the presents on the table. "What are you doing here? And where's your mother?" I went inside my jacket pocket and took out a tiny packet. "I've got a major surprise for her tonight. I'm bringing her on a 7-day trip on the new premium cruise line. She's going to be pleased. Don't say anything." I want it to be a surprise. Sophia did not answer quickly. Instead, she gave me an ambiguous glance. Her eyes were filled with doubt, maybe even dread. "Dad," she whispered gently, her voice trembling unexpectedly. Hearing her tone, I felt a stab of concern. It reminded me of when she was a child, sitting on my lap and trying to tell me something that bothered her. However, this was not a child's confession. There was something deeper here that chilled me before she said anything. "What's wrong?" I inquired, my stomach clenching. "Is everything good with your mother?" Sophia's hands shook as she inhaled, her eyes brimming with unshed tears. "Mom's fine," she said immediately, although her tone belied her words. "But we need to talk." I took out a chair and sat across from her, attempting to calm myself as fear crept into my chest. "Okay," I said thoughtfully. "What is going on?" She paused before speaking, her words stuttering. "You know how much Mom loves you, right?" she started. "She's been telling me how happy she's been lately, how much better things have felt between you two." "Yes," I said, nodding. "And I adore her, too. That's why I'm doing all of this tonight, to show her how much I care." I nodded toward the flowers and tickets, trying to relieve her stress. Sophia's tears eventually flowed, and she turned aside before meeting my gaze again. "Dad, I'm so sorry," she whimpered. "But Mom's on a date." The words struck me like a blow in the stomach. I gazed at her, unable to grasp what I'd just heard. "What?" I said, scarcely audible. "What are you talking about?" "She loves you, Dad." Sophia's voice cracked. "She was out with someone else tonight. She couldn't tell you, so she asked me. She did not want to harm you, but it was just for one night. She will come back tomorrow." I felt like the earth had been pulled out from under me. "Is this some sort of twisted joke?" I inquired, my voice rising. "Your mother would never have betrayed me like way. We've come closer than ever. This does not make sense." "Dad, please," Sophia pleaded, attempting to soothe me. "Mom loves you. She just craved something new, something she thought was lacking. She assured me that it would not affect how much she loved you. She thought it would even make things better." I rose suddenly, my chair scraping against the floor. "Why are you involved in this?" I demanded. "This is between your mother and I. She had no right to drag you into this." Sophia paused before saying, "Mom and I are close. We tell each other everything." She confessed in me that she felt undesired and that things had become stale. "My friend's father has been lonely since his wife died. They met, and I introduced them." "You what?" I yelled, my rage pouring out. "Did you introduce them? Did you set up your mother with another man? What on earth were you thinking?" "I was trying to help," Sophia whispered softly, tears flowing down her cheeks. "It sounds horrible, but I believed it was just what Mom needed. I did not intend for it to harm you." "Help?" I snapped. "Who needs help? Definitely not me. Where is she now?" "What do you mean she won't be home till tomorrow?" "She's at a restaurant," Sophia said gently. "I'm not sure which one. After supper, they'll spend the night together. But just once. She will come back tomorrow." The treachery swept over me in waves. So all her affection these past weeks was just her trying to cover her tracks. I said with anger. "She's throwing everything away for this." "She's not throwing anything away," Sophia wailed. "She loves you. She just needed this. Please try to understand." I gazed at her, the weight of treachery twisting inside me. When I finally spoke, my tone was icy cold. "Sophia, I think you should leave now." "Dad, go," I replied abruptly. "You and your mother have made your choices. Now I need to make mine." Sophia sat at the table, sobbing uncontrollably. She hid her face in her hands and wailed quietly. "Dad, please don't say that. I love you and I don't want to leave. Mom and I planned for me to stay tonight so you wouldn't be alone." I glanced at her, my rage boiling just under the surface, ready to bubble over. "Sophia," I said, my tone cold and measured, "your actions tonight have made me question whether you ever truly respected me as a father. You are so much like your mother, cut from the same cloth. For years, I worked tirelessly to give you both the life you deserved, and this is my reward. Betrayal. Humiliation. I've clearly been nothing more than a provider to you too. Respect. Love." Apparently, those were, and Sophia raised her tear-stained face, her lips shaking as she said, "Dad, I love you. Please don't say that. Let Mom explain everything tomorrow. You've had 29 beautiful years together. I know you love her. Please just give her this one thing and she won't leave you. She loves you." I shook my head, my voice rising with each syllable. "She might have her one thing, or two, or 1,000, but she will never have me again. Forgiveness? That's out of the question. And as for this, the lonely man who thought it was acceptable to go after a married woman. He'll face consequences too. Now leave me. You've shown me exactly where your loyalties lie. You still have your mother, and nothing will change for the two of you. You're a perfect match, as far as I'm concerned." Sophia, her face crushed in amazement, turned and ran from the home. The door slammed shut behind her, sounding like the last nail in our relationship's coffin. I remained still, the quiet around me oppressive and stifling. Sophia may have recognized for the first time how far she had come. Her determination to assist her mother in this ludicrous plot was irreversible. While I hoped she realized the repercussions of her behavior, I wasn't concerned. In that moment, Emily and Sophia's treachery seemed like a punch to the chest, leaving me confused and unable to understand it. Honestly, I didn't want to. When she departed, I grabbed my phone and phoned Emily's number. It went directly to voicemail. I tried again and got the same result. My anger turned into rage as I left message after message asking for her to contact me and come home. When the phone calls failed, I resorted to text messages, pouring out every ounce of my rage, despair, and desperation in a hopeless effort to make her comprehend the devastation she was creating. But nothing. No answer. By 3 a.m., I knew she was not coming back. She had not even acknowledged me. I sat on the sofa, looking blankly at the television, even though I wasn't watching anything. The clamor provided a worthless diversion from the turmoil in my head. My whole world had fallen in one evening. I couldn't stop thinking about the 29 years we'd spent together, the life we'd created and the love we'd shared. I considered Sophia's birth, her childhood milestones and her wedding day. I recalled Emily and I standing together, proud of the family we'd built and certain it was unbreakable. Even in recent years, our intimacy remained steady, if routine. We continued to make love a few times each week, usually finishing the night with murmured "I love yous" as we fell asleep in each other's arms. It wasn't a blazing desire anymore, but it felt genuine. Or so I thought. My gaze shifted to the window, where the faint shape of Emily's art studio was apparent in the moonlight. I constructed the studio for her 22 years ago, devoting my time and energy to creating a setting where she could flourish. It had become her refuge, adorned with her paintings and sculptures, several of which had received accolades. I was so proud of her that I dedicated a whole room in our home to showcasing her accomplishments. But suddenly, that studio symbolized all I'd given up: time, love, and energy, only for her to toss it away. Fueled by a combination of alcohol and rage, I started pacing the house, my mind racing with evil ideas. The longer I glanced at that studio, the more it became a metaphor for everything Emily had destroyed. I couldn't sit still anymore. My despair had transformed into something altogether different, a drive to act. I started carrying Emily's possessions into the studio one by one, her designer shoes, costly outfits, and jewelry, all of which ended up in a growing mound in the middle of her so-called refuge. I combed the home, taking down photo albums, wedding photos, and even relics from the attic: her bridal gown, Sophia's infant clothes. Everything that had previously carried emotional significance now seemed useless. By the time daylight arrived, the studio was filled with memories I no longer cared about. I assigned myself a deadline of 6 a.m. If Emily had not returned by then, I would complete what I had begun. When the clock hit 6:05, my patience broke. I took a can of gasoline from the garage and doused the mound, allowing the fuel to seep into the walls. My hand trembled as I struck the match. I paused just briefly before flinging it upon the studio floor. The flames sprang into life, engulfing everything in their path. I stood outdoors, watching the fire burn, the heat scorching my flesh. Smoke billowed into the sky, a physical representation of my anguish and wrath. When the flames were too strong, I turned away, got into my vehicle, and drove away. My mind raced, but my heart felt horribly heavy. Tears flowed down my cheeks as I realized the gravity of what I had done. By the time I arrived at a highway hotel about 100 miles distant, I was exhausted. I paid in cash, didn't want to be discovered, and slumped into the bed. Exhaustion eventually overpowered me. When I awoke around midday, I clicked on my phone to find hundreds of missed calls and texts from Sophie, Emily, and even the sheriff. The weight of that night came crashing down on me again. There was no going back. My life as I knew it had ended forever. As I walked out of the hotel room, I felt a rush of tense energy flood over me. My pulse raced as I saw Ethan standing at the restaurant's door. He was definitely beautiful, with his confident grin and easy stance immediately capturing my attention. Dressed elegantly, he emanated a charisma that made my heart race. I had taken special care of my looks. My sleek black dress embraced my form, transparent tights highlighted my legs, and high heels provided a touch of elegance. Earlier that day, I had spent hours perfecting my hair and cosmetics, trying to make this evening memorable for both of us. Ethan's eyes brightened as he saw me approach, his gaze lingering appreciatively on my clothing and the trace of flesh displayed by the neckline of my dress. I sensed his approbation in the way he slightly shifted his stance, and an unexpected rush of confidence sprang inside me. I smiled and leaned in to welcome him with a little kiss on the cheek. His scent was warm and welcoming, perfectly complementing our chemistry. We exchanged pleasantries before heading to the bar and sliding onto our chairs as the evening started. As we spoke, I saw him sneaking looks at my legs and the hem of my dress. His subtle but evident curiosity made me feel wanted in a way I hadn't in years. I smiled to myself and resolved to let go of my concerns. I hushed my phone and put it in my handbag. Tonight was about being present in the moment, devoid of distractions. Our discussion flowed naturally, punctuated by provocative comments and laughing. Ethan's easy charm and attentive approach pulled me in, and as I talked, I found myself caressing his arm and moving closer than I normally would. It felt amazing, like finding a part of myself I had long forgotten. After our second drink, the hostess approached and escorted us to our table. She escorted us to a modest, darkly lit part of the restaurant, where the atmosphere was private and beautiful. The food was delicious, but Ethan's company captured me. He listened closely, his blue eyes never leaving mine, and his humorous remarks made me smile. He leaned in and whispered in a low, teasing tone, "Do you still want to spend the night with me?" Instead of replying, I made a cheeky gesture. I slipped off one of my heels and eased my foot beneath the table, brushing it lightly on his calf. His eyes widened as he looked down and saw my red-painted toenails through the transparent fabric of my tights. A slow, knowing grin appeared on his face, and he mumbled, "It's time we go." We exited the restaurant together, the crisp night air increasing the excitement between us. He brought me to his hotel, where he had reserved a room in advance. As the elevator climbed, reality set me, and for a brief moment, thoughts of Daniel crossed my mind. Ethan must have felt my uncertainty because he drew me closer, his muscular arm stabilizing me. His kiss was deep and engulfing, erasing my doubts like they didn't exist. In that moment, I decided to succumb to the night, the moment, and him. Inside the room, Ethan wasted no time. He unbuttoned my dress, allowing it to puddle around my feet while he gazed at me. His admiring stare and delicate touch left me feeling both attractive and wanted. He said quietly as he continued to strip me, his words kindling a fire I had not felt in years. When he placed me down on the bed, every action was intentional, full of care and desire. The night unfolded in ways I could not have predicted. Ethan's touch was confident yet sensitive, and his lips left me breathless. He even requested me to put my heels back on, expressing how much he liked the appearance. His suggestion was wonderful, it made me feel courageous and alive. As we made love, his passion swept me away, leaving no space for regret or second thoughts. At that point, it was just us, engrossed in the lightning of our connection. Ethan stared deep into my eyes and said, "I love you, Emily." His words took me off guard, evoking something raw and vulnerable inside me. Tears welled up as I realized the gravity of the situation. It seemed transforming and almost holy. We did not come to a complete halt. The desire was renewed again, with each meeting being more powerful than the previous. By dawn, when the first rays of sunshine filtered through the curtains, reality started to return. The memories of Daniel and our life together returned, followed by a sense of remorse. However, Ethan remained gentle, caressing my hair. He whispered quietly, "Emily, I meant all I said. You're incredible, sensual, powerful, and intriguing. I want to see you again. Can we make it happen?" I paused, knowing that the truth was inescapable. "Ethan," I started cautiously, "this has been the most fantastic experience of my life, and you are an outstanding guy, but I am married, and this was just a one-time event. I cannot do this again. I will cherish tonight forever, but my place is with Daniel." He maintained my stare, his look both optimistic and understanding. "Think about it," he said kindly. "I can bring so much joy into your life. If you change your mind, I will be here." "I'll think about it," I offered, knowing deep down that my response would not alter. He kissed me again, and for a little minute, I let myself picture an existence in which this was feasible. As I exited the room, the weight of my choices fell on me. I couldn't dispute the beauty of what I'd seen, but I knew Daniel deserved my heart and commitment today. All I could hope for was to find a way to reconcile my previous decisions with the life I still desired. Following breakfast at the motel, Ethan took me home. When I switched on my phone for the first time since yesterday night, a slew of missed calls and texts swamped the screen. One message from Daniel jumped out, pulling uncomfortably on my conscience. The notion of him suffering while I was gone made my chest knot with remorse. My eyes welled up with tears as I realized that my actions had caused him grief. Before I could browse any farther, the phone started to ring. It was Sophia. "Where are you, Mom?" she inquired, her voice panicked. "I'm on my way home now," I said, my stomach in knots. "What's wrong?" Sophia said shakily, "There was a fire in the home. We tried phoning you all night, but your phone was turned off." "Is there a fire?" I gasped, the phrase stuck in my throat. "Is your father okay? Where is he?" "That's the thing," she said, her voice cracking. "He is missing. Nobody has heard from him, and he isn't answering his phone. I have a horrible feeling about this." "He'll be there soon," I said hurriedly. "Stay put. I will call you back." As Ethan pulled into our street, my heart fell. Fire engines and police cars filled the driveway. From the front, the home seemed to be in good condition, but I felt a strong sensation of foreboding. I got out of the vehicle and approached a fireman standing nearby. "Excuse me," I said, my voice shaking. "I am Emily Spencer, the homeowner." "What happened?" The fireman looked at me and then at Ethan before saying, "Mrs. Spencer, the most of the home was preserved, but there was extensive smoke damage. You will be unable to remain here until it has been cleaned up. The worst of it occurred in the tiny cottage behind the home. It is entirely damaged." "I am sorry." "My studio?" I said quietly. He nodded seriously. "I am afraid so. There is nothing left except ashes. We will look into the reason, but in the meanwhile, a detective needs to meet with you." The weight of his remarks struck me like a blow. My legs went out, and Ethan grabbed me and directed me to sit on the sidewalk. Tears raced down my cheeks as I peered at the blazing remnants of my studio, where I'd put my heart and soul into my work. It was completely gone. I scarcely saw Detective Carter approaching until he said, "Mrs. Spencer, do you know what occurred here?" "No," I muttered and shook my head. "I was not home yesterday night. I know nothing about it." His gaze flickered to Ethan. "And you are?" he inquired, lifting an eyebrow. "Just a friend," Ethan said nervously. The detective's gaze darkened as he returned to me. "Where is your husband, Mrs. Spencer?" "I don't know," I said, my voice barely above a whisper. I have not seen him. He is missing. And where were you last night? He inquired, his tone calm yet inquisitive. I paused before grudgingly responding. I was downtown at the Grand Hyatt with Ethan. The detective's eyes furrowed as he exchanged glances with his partner. My stomach churned. I had just acknowledged to being with another guy while my spouse was missing. The implications were devastating. Mrs. Spencer, the detective continued, are you and your spouse divorced? Do you know where he may have been? No, I immediately replied, my cheeks blazing. We aren't separated. We're blissfully married, even if the circumstances made the words ring hollow. When you hear from him, have him call me, the detective said, giving me his card. We'll need to ask him some questions. As he walked away, I was hit by a wave of emotions, sadness over the loss of my studio, rage at the destruction of my sanctuary, and dread about Daniel's departure. The notion that he was complicit in this nightmare sent shivers down my spine. I called Sophia. Have you heard from your father? I inquired, attempting to keep my voice calm. No, she responded, frustrated. Why were you not here last night, Mom? You promised to be here with him. I was ready to react when she whispered, he threw me out. He said I wasn't his daughter anymore. Her comment struck me like a strike in the chest. Daniel had always been a kind father, so saying anything so nasty was utterly out of character. What had I done to bring him to this? The stink of smoke lingered throughout the home, and the walls bore black stains from the fire. Living here was clearly out of the question for the time being. Dread crept over me as I wandered around the rooms, gathering a few items. I froze when I entered the bedroom. Everything about me was gone, including my clothing, shoes, and personal possessions. Even the wedding bands I had placed on the nightstand were gone. A horrible thought struck me, Daniel must have stolen everything. Did he believe I had abandoned him? Had he damaged my belongings in a fit of anger? My knees crumbled under the weight of my own shame and terror. I hurried back to the studio, rummaging through the burned remnants. Among the ashes, I discovered charred artwork, melted frames, and singed cloth. Daniel had clearly eliminated me from his life, rather than just leaving. Overwhelmed, I phoned Sophia again, my voice cracking. Sophia, I cannot remain here. I have nowhere to go. Ethan, who had been passively observing, moved closer. You can stay with me, he said softly. But I couldn't face him just now. I need to be alone, I said firmly. He nodded and departed without saying anything further, despite the hurt on his face. As I stood in the rubble of my life, tears flowing down my cheeks, I felt completely lost. Everything I had achieved and loved seemed to be slipping through my fingers. At the time, I was filled with rage, both at myself and at Ethan. Deep down, I knew the fault was mine, but it was simpler to detest him for his involvement in my betrayal. I despised myself for what I had done, the selfish decisions that had led to this point. Through choking tears, I turned to Sophia. I've lost your father, I said, my voice cracking. Don't say that, Mom, Sophia said, her tone soft but strained. Dad loves you. He always has. He destroyed everything, Sophia. All of my clothing, artwork, studio. Everything is gone. He didn't leave me anything, even a place to stay. He refuses to answer my calls. I've profoundly harmed him, and I don't blame him for being angry. What I did to him was unforgivable. I shouldn't have gone on that date, I whispered. I should have informed him how I was feeling instead. We could have worked it out, but my selfishness wrecked everything. If I were him, I would not forgive myself either. What should I do now? I don't have a home, clothes, or anything. Sophia's voice shook as she attempted to soothe me. Mom, you can't take all of the guilt. I'm also at blame. You may remain with us till everything is resolved. This afternoon, we'll go shopping for clothing and discuss the next steps. I shook my head, my voice tremulous. Sophia, it's not just your home. It is everything. All my paintings, sculptures, years of effort. They are all gone. 29 years of marriage, 22 years of my life's passion, it's all gone. And now I am entirely alone. I'm not sure what I'm living for anymore. I collapsed beneath the weight of sadness while neighbors stared from the street. Then, as if the world was twisting the knife, my phone started ringing. Daniel's name appeared on the screen, and my heart stopped. With shaky palms, I responded, hoping for a lifeline. "Daniel, is this you?" I asked, breathless but optimistic. His speech came across as chilly and disconnected. "How are you doing, Emily?" he asked plainly. "Daniel, please tell me where you are," I pleaded, attempting to control my voice. "We need to talk." "No, Emily," he responded abruptly, his tone firm. "There is nothing left to speak about. I know everything. Sophia told me. And let me be clear, she is your daughter, not mine. You're both dead to me. This will be the final time we talk." "Daniel, don't say that," I shouted. "I love you, and you must understand that. Please come home and we can chat. The studio no longer exists. Have you done this?" His voice became rougher. "Emily, I did not fire the studio." "You did. Perhaps not with your hands, but through treachery. When I saw your wedding rings abandoned on the dresser and realized you had committed yourself to another man, you ceased to exist for me. You ruined all we had. And Sophia's role. It's beyond understanding. I am done. I'll meet with the lawyers on Monday to begin the divorce." "Daniel, please," I pleaded, my voice breaking. "We had 29 beautiful years together. You cannot simply chuck it aside." "Emily," he remarked with a harsh tone, "you threw it away. You planned this, manipulating me into 3 weeks of tenderness to alleviate your guilt before cheating on me with our daughter's aid. It was harsh and unforgivable. Nobody could tolerate such treachery. I hope you'll regret this for the rest of your life. Do not contact me again. Speak with me via my lawyer." "No, Daniel." "Wait." I yelled into the phone, but it went dead. Just like that, the guy I loved and the life we had created were gone. I sank to the ground, holding the phone and sobbing. Sophia came shortly later and drew me into her arms. We sobbed together at the loss of everything I had treasured, including my marriage, house, and world. When we got at Sophia's residence, she recounted the scenario to her husband, James. His response was quick and explosive. "Sophia, did you urge your mother to go on a date with another man?" he said, his voice heavy with astonishment. "So you left your father alone? What were your thoughts? Did you really expect he'd be all right with this? What type of guy would ever tolerate that? Is this how you will treat me as we become older? Betray me the way your mother betrayed your father?" "Daniel was a nice guy. You and your mother were everything to him, and you destroyed him." Sophia remained transfixed, her face blanched, as his rage began to flow forth. James' voice softened, but remained forceful. "I'll contact Daniel and apologize for what you've done. As for us, we need to have a real conversation about where we go from here. I can't pretend that this hasn't rattled me. Do you have children with you? That is off the table until I am certain I understand your principles. Because I will not allow anything like this in my own marriage." His comments struck Sophia hard. She had not completely pondered the long-term ramifications of her conduct until now. To her, it had been a single innocent night after years of marriage, but when she confronted the reality of her decisions, she recognized the extent of the damage. Her parents' marriage was finished. Her family was devastated. Her personal connection with James is now hanging by a thread. The implications of her actions were only starting to play out, and they would plague all of us for a long time. 5 days after everything fell, I came home to deal with the wreckage. I chose against engaging insurance since the inconvenience was not worth it. During a meeting with my lawyer, I made it plain that the home was non-negotiable in the divorce. Daniel could have half of our money, but I refused to pay child support. If he resisted, I'd reveal the affair with Sophia's friend's father. The divorce proceedings were already beginning. I'd also spoken with a criminal defense attorney about burning down the studio. Because I owned the property and was not pursuing an insurance claim, the likelihood of criminal charges was minimal. At most, I may face a fine. Relieved, I focused on moving on from Daniel and rebuilding my life. Walking around the home, I assessed the fire damage and estimated the cost of repairs. I was inspecting the walls in one of the bedrooms when I heard the entrance door creak open. Sophia's words boomed across the hall. "Are you here, Dad?" she phoned, her voice frantic and unsteady. I remained mute, peering out the window at the ash pile that had once been my art studio. A horrible pleasure washed over me. Sophia's footsteps got louder and she emerged at the doorway, tears flowing down her cheeks. She rushed towards me, putting her arms around me. "Daddy, please forgive us," she cried. "We love you. I adore you. Do not shut us out." I tensed and stepped back to extricate myself from her clutches. My voice was frigid. "Sophia, I have told you that I would never forgive any of you. I will carry your treachery with me forever. Now, leave." "No," she answered, shaking her head through her tears. "You are my father. You love me. You can't simply erase me." I met her stare, my face unwavering. "You are mistaken. I do not have a daughter anymore. The person who deceived me is not my kid. Leave." Her voice broke as she begged again. "Mom needs you. She always tears and regrets everything. She realizes she made a mistake. Please chat with her." I shook my head, unimpressed. "Never." She terminated our marriage by leaving her wedding rings on the table and spending the night with someone else. "It is over. You and your mother may contact me via my lawyer. I'm changing my phone number today." Her voice cracked. "Are you really throwing away 29 years of marriage?" "No, Sophia," I said firmly. "Your mother discarded it when she picked someone else. I'll never forgive you both for destroying all we created. Now go out of my home." Her face crumpled and new tears flowed. She turned and fled without saying another word. Her cries rang down the hallway as the door shut, leaving the home silent. Sophia's grief was palpable, yet it was nothing compared to mine. Supporting Emily's treachery had crossed a limit, and the harm was irreversible. I was not prepared to digest anything, much alone forgive. Emily received her divorce papers the following day. She was crushed, comprehending the full amount of her loss. She attempted to combat it, offering therapy and reaching out to me, but I rejected every suggestion. From then on, I never talked to her or Sophia again. Sophia's husband, James, phoned me in shock. "I can't believe what they did to you," he told me. "It's making me reconsider everything about my marriage with Sophia. If she can betray you, how can I trust her?" He acknowledged that he was uncertain about their future, particularly having children. Counseling helped, but their marriage was still rocky. Emily's life went apart. She intended to return to the home after it had been rebuilt, but the divorce had left it in my name. Instead, she ended herself living in a modest apartment and working at an art gallery to support herself. Her days of creative freedom and ease were over. The life we had constructed was vanished, leaving only distant recollections. For a short moment of exhilaration, we lost everything: our love, our house, and our future. No amount of sorrow or tears would alter it. Sleepless nights plagued her as she dealt with the ramifications of her decisions. I sold the home and went away a few months after it had been restored. Emily, uninformed of the sale, paid a visit one day in the hopes of seeing me, only to discover that strangers were living there. It was the ultimate blow, thus ending that chapter of her life. I rang the doorbell, and a young couple answered. They seemed cheerful and comfortable, in stark contrast to the mayhem within me. The lady smiled pleasantly. "Hello, how can we help you?" she inquired. I paused and swallowed hard. "I'm looking for Daniel Spencer. Is he here?" Their faces softened with realization. "Oh, do you mean the man who sold us this house?" the lady said. "No, he said he was leaving the country to start a new life. He was so kind and helpful." The pit in my gut became deeper. "Are you Emily?" the lady inquired. "Yes," I muttered. The lady went back inside the home and reappeared moments later with a sealed letter. "He left an envelope for you. He asked us to give this to you if you ever came by." I clutched the envelope firmly. "Thank you," I said quietly, keeping back tears. "Good luck and enjoy this lovely home." Tears streamed down my cheeks as I returned to my vehicle. Sitting in the driver's seat, I held the envelope, the final link to Daniel. He was gone. Truly gone. The weight of that realization struck me harder than I expected. I had ruined 29 years of love with one selfish night. What did I do? Back in my flat, the emptiness mirrored my melancholy. Sitting on the bed, frightened, I opened the letter. Daniel's familiar handwriting brought more tears as I read, "Emily, you were my first and only love, and am sorry I failed you as a husband. I would have moved heaven and earth to supply you with more, but since you chose a different route, our marriage ends apart. Those 2 weeks before your treachery made me feel you had fallen in love with me again, and they were the happiest of my life. However, when Sophia revealed how you exploited those times to distract me, it crushed me. Emily, you've succeeded in destroying me and our marriage. I had planned a special night that evening, a surprise, with roses, your favorite chocolates, and wine, to celebrate us and give you something meaningful, a new cruise on the luxury cruise. I can't remain in this city longer, I've quit my job and started over in another country, don't attempt to locate me, I've gone offline and have no desire to talk with you or Sophia again, this chapter is finished, and in going on, it will take years to heal from the anguish you both caused me. I can't stay in that house without the love of my life or my daughter, and now that you're both gone, I have no reason to stay. I hope you had a wonderful night, Emily, and enjoy the memories you'll have with your daughter. Forget me, just as I've forgotten you. My new life starts now. Daniel." By the time I finished reading, the tears that I thought had dried long ago began to flow freely, soaking my pillow as I curled into a ball. His remarks wounded harder than I could have expected. The excitement of that one night had faded into a distant, bitter regret, replaced by overpowering grief. I had ruined everything, Daniel's love, our lives, and the house we built, for one moment of selfish pleasure. Now, at 49, I was alone. A ghost of the woman I once was, plagued by my decisions. The future without Daniel seems empty and dismal. I had given up a life full of love and significance for a fleeting pleasure, and the cost was too high. Late one night, I stood outside Ethan's home, holding a frigid crowbar. It wasn't an easy choice, but given all had done to damage my life, this encounter seemed unavoidable. When the door opened, I shoved my way in. Ethan paused, stunned by my appearance and the angry expression on my face. "Who are you?" he inquired, drawing back warily. "Daniel," I said calmly. "The husband of the woman you stole." His expression transformed, a combination of dread and amazement. He lifted his fists defensively. I thought Emily was okay with it. "I swear, I didn't know." "Save it," I said, moving closer. "You knew she was married. You knew she was mine, and you didn't care." Before he could respond, months of fury and humiliation sprang to the top. I acted. The crowbar hit him hard, and he collapsed to the floor. But I did not stop. Each strike unleashed the rage I'd been harboring for too long. When I came to a halt, Ethan lay on the ground, apparently terrified and hurt. His stance mirrored the aftermath of the incident. I crouched down and locked eyes with him as he cried. "Here's some advice," I said coldly. "Messing with a married woman is bad for your health." I stepped out, wiping my hands on my pants before climbing into the waiting Uber. As we drove to the airport, I felt no remorse or satisfaction, just finality. By the time Ethan arrived at the hospital and notified the police, I had already boarded a plane to San Jose, Costa Rica. It took the authorities 3 weeks to notice I'd fled the country. It did not matter. Costa Rica does not extradite for assault, therefore I had no intention of returning. Ethan would have to deal with the consequences of his actions, just as I had with Emily's treachery. According to what I've heard, he spent weeks in the hospital and months in physical therapy recovering his ability to walk. The 23 stitches on his face will always remind him of his conduct. Meanwhile, I began over $750,000 after selling my home and saving. My oceanfront condo in Costa Rica would provide me with a lifetime of sustenance. 6 months later, I was sitting on a beach in Tamarindo, beer in hand, admiring the surf. For the first time in decades, I felt at ease. Breakups occur. Divorces are quite typical. It is not reasonable to remain in a situation where you are not respected. Emily's life had disintegrated. She ended herself living in a small apartment and working at an art gallery to make ends meet. Sophia, her co-conspirator, had her own challenges. Her husband almost divorced her but remained, though it took him years to trust her again. None of this mattered to me. Sitting on the beach, I knew one thing for certain: my past was behind me. I had destroyed the bridges that bound me to a life of treachery and sorrow. My future was mine to create, and it seemed brighter than ever. Thank you for watching. Do you believe forgiveness is possible after betrayal? Please share your comments below and don't forget to like and subscribe.